Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. All right, so I think we're looking at things all wrong as it pertains to basketball players, individual basketball players, and how much responsibility or onus should go on them for winning. I think about that because I listened to the quote that LeBron said, and as I always paraphrase, I just give you the gist of what I took from it. Essentially, he said, man, he wished he was a tennis star or something like that, so that the success of what happens could be solely on his back. He would have more or less a better chance of winning more so if he wasn't relying upon others to succeed with him in order for his success to take place. It's a team sport, and that's what you sign up for when you're a basketball player. You can't. It ain't just about you. It ain't just like golf or tennis. You know, you're fighting against a field and you're working with others, and no matter how dominant you are or how much you could do by yourself, if those other guys don't do things well enough to complement what you're doing, well enough against what you're going against, you're gonna have a difficult time matching up and getting a victory. I think a lot of times when we look at these stars, we look at players that are superstars, stuff like that, specifically in the NFL, in the NBA basketball, because we see their faces, no mask covering them, because they are, you zoom in on their faces at the free throw line and stuff like that. We know these guys better than we know most of these other stars in other sports. And I think because of it, you get the guise of credit given in situations. It's just like I've mentioned a long time ago, vanity things. And I used to say players that do vanity things, things that look good on the basketball floor, or even in basketball, players that do vanity things, your running back, your wide receivers, your quarterbacks. But that ain't got nothing. You're not saying enough about the left tackles. You're not saying enough about the linemen. You're not saying enough about the center and these different positions. And in basketball, maybe you're not saying, giving enough credit to the idea that other players need to complement. Open shots need to be hit. If you have only passers passing around creating great shots and the guys can't finish the play, the passing didn't do nothing for you. If you're letting the other team rebound constantly, it doesn't matter how many shots you hit, you're probably still going to end up losing the game because you're giving away extra possessions, keeping the ball out of your hands. If you don't play any defense, you can't win. You need other players to help defend. Even if you're big enough and strong enough to do everything, you still can't win. I remember back in the day, Dwight Howard would be the anchor of the Orlando defense. Their whole defense revolved around him. Everything. He played damn near 82 games for like 7 years straight. Did everything. Almost 40 minutes a game, every game. And they still never won a championship because it's not enough to have one guy dominate. You need other guys to complement. It ain't enough. They got to a final, but they never won it. You know what I mean? And then you look at a team like the San Antonio Spurs, and you like Tim Duncan. And you say Tim Duncan's an amazing player. You want to give him all the credit if you don't know what you're talking about. Only him. He's the only guy. San Antonio, 5 championships. Then you look up, you see Tony Parker next to him. You see Hall of Fame Coach Pop next to him. You see, obviously, Manu Ginobili there. You see the entire system that they had in place. Did he complement that well? Was he a superstar? Of course. Did a guy like LeBron James have that type of stability, or Kobe Bryant have that type of stability, or even guys who didn't win championships like Allen Iverson, did he have that stability? I don't think so. I don't think they had those gifts that Tim Duncan was given in the path that he was given in this league. He did a lot with his path. But that's not to say he would have succeeded and had the same success if he would have taken a more journeyman approach like LeBron. Or if he would have found himself starting his career off in a bad situation, like let's say at the Knicks or something. Maybe he doesn't start his career off the right way. Maybe he's in a log jam with forwards, right? Different scenarios that guys find themselves in. Log jams with players at their position, something like that. Get an early injury. You don't see them for a while and get setbacks like a guy like Jonathan Isaac or something like that. You just don't know how much of what you got going on in the NBA when you get there is going to be on your shoulders. You could do everything perfect, still lose every game because you're on the wrong team. Think about guys like Mitch Richmond, who played a Hall of Fame career for a Kings team that could never win more than 40 games. Played there practically his whole career. Stellar. They couldn't do nothing. And it wasn't his fault. If they would have surrounded him with a circumstance like Mike had, Michael Jordan, if he would have had a Scottie Pippen and a bunch of other guys, maybe he could have succeeded a little more than he did. Maybe if he would have been given a Blazers situation like Clyde Drexler, maybe he would have been heralded a bit more than he is at this moment. The point I'm trying to say is basketball is a team sport, and a lot of times we give guys a lot of credit for stuff they have very little control over. You know, we herald Michael Jordan as the greatest player of all time, and his accolades back that up. But a lot of his success, his championship success, wasn't just on his shoulders. Other guys had to do certain things for it in order for him to have a perfect record. Scottie Pippen's pay cut, that was very well illustrated in the documentary that was done on their team and Michael Jordan. If that type of pay cut doesn't take place, which most players do not get their running mate at such a discount for the majority of their prime. Michael Jordan was gifted that. Kobe didn't get that. Can you imagine if we would have had Shaq on half of what his salary was, what we could have did with our team? How many more championships we would have won if that were the case? Or for some reason we got Powell on a minimum contract? Like, this is the type of stuff we're talking about in regards to how the Bulls were able to sustain their dynasty. Look at Steph Curry and the path that he's had. The stability in Golden State. He's never had to leave. He didn't find himself in a situation where the team was bad for very long. He overcame his injury issues with his ankles, and they stepped right into a dynasty. Draymond Green came out of the second round, lucky draft pick. Klay Thompson falls into their lap for what, 7th? That wasn't even the greatest draft pick in the lottery. Like, they just had a lot of things fall into place. You know, Andrew Wiggins, his value was low in Minnesota, so they were able to trade for him for something that D'Angelo Russell, you know what I mean? They were able to give pieces away to bring in talent that ultimately made them champions. All this stuff can't landed in Steph's lap. He's got Bob Myers. You know what I'm saying? I think about guys who start their careers off, don't have that type of thing. I'm looking at just random situations. You know, not everybody gets that type of path. Randomly thinking about a guy like Davion Mitchell. He was drafted into a logjam. This is one of the best defenders in basketball. He was drafted in Sacramento to a freaking logjam at this position. Then I think about a guy like Tyler Hero, who's up for the max. Tyler Hero landed in a spot where they only needed him. Donovan Mitchell only needed him. These are guys whose spots were manna from heaven. When they landed in their positions on their teams, it was perfect, literally perfect for them. That don't happen all the time. That's not what you get. And so when I listen to a LeBron James talk about how you wish he played tennis to a degree or what have you, or I look at the struggles of certain guys like Wilt Chamberlain, who only won 1 or 2 championships, knowing damn well that he had better stats than all humans, or even little things like Kobe Bryant only having 1 MVP or Shaq only having 1 MVP when we know they dominated an entire era of basketball. A lot of these things are outside of the player's control. But at the end of the day, when it's time to talk about the GOAT, we're including things that are outside of their control as means of giving them that title. And my thing is, isn't that bad math? Isn't that bad math? When you start crediting people with things that they're not necessarily in control over versus people who also have those same disadvantages that maybe have taken even lesser paths, don't we have to kind of find a way to balance out those stats to see who did what with more or less? I don't think we've split that properly yet, but we are so damn demonstrative about how we define who the GOAT is and how we define players in tiers. But I don't think we've even split the math properly yet. We're not even there yet. There's more things to discover about how we deduce who's what. And as I continue to learn about basketball specifically, why certain things take place on the basketball floor, why a guy may not play hard on defense on this side, why a guy's been missing 7 and 8 3-point shots in a row. These are things that in some cases actually have explanations. He missed them 7 shots because he's exerting so much on defense. He's doing more defensively and his legs are shot. So now he can't hit a shot. But he's guarding the best guy on the other end. Like, these are things you learn as you grow in watching the game, for not playing the game. And as you learn these things, you realize, well, shoot, you got to put them into the conversation as it pertains to who's best. Who's best is determined a lot by these little things, because you're going to say the guy who won is the guy who deserves the accolade. You're going to say the guy who won deserves to be an all-star. I can't tell you how many times I've seen all-stars be the third and fourth guy on the team because the team had the best overall record. And for years, I've been listening to them say that this is logical. But as I break it down in my head, it is not at all. Because your all-star appearance is an individual accolade. It should be based on what you were able to contribute to your very own career. But a lot that goes into you making the team is determined by what other guys do. If the bench played well enough, then your starters were winning, and therefore you got 3 starters in the all-star game. You got 50 wins. Why? Because your whole team is good, and your coach is a coach of the year candidate, but you got 3 all-stars. You don't deserve 3 all-stars because that third all-star ain't better than a guy over there who plays for the 5th seed. But his team ain't winning. Now, his team ain't winning because his running mate is hurt, or because his third guy took more than a third of the cap, and that guy sucks. He's playing ball that would dominate anybody over here on that team with 3 all-stars, but not winning. But the winning has nothing to do with him. But the way that we've been conditioned to believe basketball should be determined, because it's a team sport, you got to judge by team goals. But these aren't team awards. It's individual awards. So if the math is right, if the guy on the worst team is contributing to the most possible success, then he should be given the requisite amount of respect for his ability to elevate his team from where they otherwise would be without him, even though they are garbage as hell. If he's averaging 35 points on a bad team, guess what? He's elevating them to their best possible place. Now, that may not be very far, but how is that his fault? He's relying upon other guys and coaching and other decisions that have nothing to do with his performance. But if his performance is A1, his plus-minus is crazy. He's doing everything he's supposed to do, and the team's still losing. And you can have legitimate, tangible explanations for why the team is losing that have nothing to do with his performance. How is he not supposed to be getting those awards? Because the team with the loaded 12-man roster where the 8th guy is as good as the 3rd guy, so they get, because they've beat everybody else who's not constructed as good as them, now they got 3 all-stars? No. That's a norm that ain't normal in sports. We've been going for that for a long time, and it never made any sense, and it makes even less sense as I break it down. I think the ultimate solution to all of this is to actually remove these individual awards. That's how you do it, which is something I totally do not support, but that's how you actually make the logic make sense. Every award should be dictated by team success if that's the case. It shouldn't be no MVPs. It's the Lakers won the championship, and the Lakers as a unit have a collection of players that are ultimately the most valuable player in the league. That should be the way you go about it if you don't want to split them hairs down the middle like I just said you're supposed to, in my opinion. Because once you start blurring the lines between individual success and team success, you start losing sight of what it is that has actually been done. What has taken place here? The Boston Celtics were an excellent basketball team because they played defense, because they were able to ultimately stifle people, because their coach was phenomenal in his rookie season. By the logic that is often used, you give Jason Tatum the MVP. Based on all of that, by the logic that we've seen often, Jake Tatum should have been the MVP. If not him, it should have been Steph Curry, the Warriors. You see what I'm saying? If we're consistent about how we do these things sometimes. I watched Steve Nash get MVPs off team success. Kobe Bryant, Shaq didn't get MVPs. They said the numbers was up there and his team success was up there. But if you look at how we were dominated, you look at how the Lakers were playing, look at how Kobe was playing, there was a very legitimate case for Kobe winning the MVP one of those years Steve Nash won it. Now, I could argue Steve Nash's numbers were a bit better than Kobe's because he was putting up crazy assists, 18, 19 assists, 20, 30 points. Like, you'd see crazy numbers. But there was a legitimate conversation to be said that there were other guys who were just doing more, who had been more impressive, et cetera, who had elevated their team more so because he had a loaded squad that shot every play 6 seconds or less. The same offense that had James Harden winning MVP and put up numbers better than any shooting guard we've seen was the same offense Steve Nash was in winning MVPs. His numbers were inflated just like James were. If you put Kobe in that offense at that time, his numbers would have been inflated too to average 38, 40 points. You put LeBron in that system, he probably averages 40 points, 20 assists. You see what I'm saying? Steve Nash was a benefit from the system he was in because the system he was in played 10 times faster than anything we had ever seen in our lives. Of course he was going to put up more numbers. They were going faster. They weren't even playing a full 24 seconds of shot clock. And he won 2 MVPs in that situation. All I'm saying is this. If we're really paying attention to what it actually took place there, then you would have taken into account the overall advantage that the system gave his stats and thus would have taken him out of the running for MVP over somebody else who didn't have those advantages. But we weren't measuring those things properly, right? Because no one thinks to do that. It's too much to split apart. Thinking about a bunch of other stuff that doesn't have to do with that specific hair being split. But when you're talking about the GOAT and you're talking about individual success in a team sport, splitting hairs is necessary. This is why I don't really partake in the GOAT conversation. Because I understand that there are probably about 367,000 hairs that have not been split. That someone ain't thought about. So they've come to this conclusion, yes, this guy's the GOAT. When I'm like, nah, because there's a hair there that you haven't even looked at. Go ahead and check it out. Get your razor ready. See what I'm saying? So, I don't think there's a proper way to define the GOAT. I don't think there's a proper way of even looking at the GOAT. I don't think we found the right, proper combination of sciences to help us determine who the GOAT actually is in the NBA. I don't think we even know. I don't think we actually even know. And I think if we were to break it down, we'd probably come up with something that we don't expect to see. The GOAT's probably Robert Horry or something. Like, seriously. When you break down, if you're going by the stats, or you're going by winning, then the GOAT is... Who got the 12 rings? It's obviously Bill Russell. But when you split Bill Russell's hair, so to speak, and you look at what was going on during his times, you know what you're going to find? A bunch of guys my height. A bunch of guys who probably couldn't run much faster than me. Now, do you dock him for that? No, because nobody could run faster than me back in them days. Everybody was less conditioned than all the athletes today. LeBron James was average 150 points in that era. I mean, it would be too easy for him to score. Too easy for him to defend. Too easy for him to do anything. Giannis, those guys would have been the most impressive athletes walking the earth if they would have walked around back then. It wouldn't even be close. So there's no way to judge these eras. You start splitting the hairs, even you get to that point, then you got to start taking into account that there was no three-point line back then. You got to take into account that there was hand checking here. You got to take into account all these different things that have changed the game, scheduling. It's impossible. We don't have the math. Y'all got to keep splitting hairs to figure out who actually deserves what in the team sport when individual success is what y'all want to give support to or give accolades to. I just don't think it actually works. We've been getting away with it for 50, 60 years, but it doesn't actually work. And that's another reason why I love doing this channel, because it's like, look, I don't have to get up here and say, yo, who's better between LeBron James and Michael Jordan today? You see all the stuff that the NBA gives us? I'm not writing anything down. I don't have any prompter in front of me. This is stuff that just comes to my mind based on the stuff that the NBA provides. We don't need narratives. We don't need them. I can sit up here and talk about how the GOAT conversation isn't a perfect science. For a whole 20 minutes, I don't need to talk about Russell Westbrook's struggles for the 708th time in a row. I'm not a network. I don't have a think tank with a bunch of people. I'm just a guy who sees stuff, who can honestly say, yo, there's something to talk about. Let's talk. And I think most people can do that. I think most people, when it comes to the NBA, you can find something to talk about. Bro, you can find a player on the Pacers bench that you could pick apart. Seriously. and talk about them and make it interesting if you really want to. For those of us who love the game that much, we don't need to talk about the Lakers every day. Well, we do because we're Laker fans. But I'm saying on ESPN, all these different networks, they don't need to do that. They don't need to do that. The NBA gives us plenty, man. I totally agree with Dre. So anyway, man, I just want to get up here and get that out there, man. The GOAT conversation is skewed. The way that the NBA provides accolades and all of that good stuff, it's wonderful, but it's a very imperfect science in my mind. I don't think they've ever really got it right. Ever. And so, you know, we just live with that. That top 75, you guys know I don't think that holds a lot of weight. I don't like that list. I know the NBA says it's the official list, but it's not based on the criteria that I think would properly define these players in their top 75 status. I think a lot of that has to do with today's politics, and we've talked about that before, but I think that top 75 list is about today's politics. Kyrie ain't on there because we didn't like what he did today. Dwight Howard ain't on there because we didn't like what he did today. You know, this era, rather. Klay Thompson ain't on there because we haven't seen him recently. He's coming back from injury, and we consider him a Robin, even though he literally was hitting like, he could score 60 points with only dribbling 3 times, and one of the best on-ball defenders in all of basketball. But because he's next to Steph Curry and Draymond Green, he's a Robin. Even though once it's time to start giving out all-star appearances, we're going to shoot all the men because they got the best record in the league. But once it's time to give him his credit for his portion of what he did, nah, because he's over there with Steph Curry. It's like, seriously? Again, that top 75 list, I think the NBA would be wise to go back and do top 100 lists in about 10 years. Get that right. Don't let too much time go in between that list and now and the next time you do another list, because I'm telling you, that list ain't going to age well at all. You can't legitimately say Dwight Howard didn't deserve to be on that damn list when we've already described it in this video, how much he was responsible for just about the entire defense during the entire era of his tenure with Orlando. He was responsible for the whole defense. When I say the whole defense, I'm not kidding. The whole defense. It was all him. Rebounding and defense. Everything else was just shooting and guys running around passing and stuff. They didn't have no defenders that I remember. Turkoglu, it didn't defend like that. Rashard Lewis, he didn't defend like that. Etc. You get the point. So, I want y'all to get y'all is in the NBA. I want you guys to kind of consider what I'm saying and continue to split hairs. I think they do a great job in the stats department. They come up with new stats every day. A lot of people make fun of them for doing that. I do not. I think that's what needs to happen. That's how you split those hairs and determine who is actually best in a team setting situation. And then you got to understand, man, I tell a guy like LeBron James and Michael Jordan, you guys are going to have to brace yourselves. In your lifetime, someone may come along who's better than both of y'all. Just like Mike had to accept that you came along and Kobe came along, Bron's going to have to accept that he ain't going to be GOAT for long if he's considered GOAT. That's why I tell him to breathe and don't worry too much about that legacy conversation, because there's still more kids coming, and they're coming with a new level of evolution just like you brought. Let's be honest with you. They're going to get faster and faster. You thought Zion was jumping out the gym? Wait till you see what the next one's going to be. You thought Victor was coming with some ridiculous length? You wait and see what's coming 8 years from now. I'm telling you. And the only thing they're going to be able to say is he dominated his field, or she dominated her field. Because honestly, you ain't going to be able to play against Kobe. You ain't going to be able to play against Mike. You ain't going to be able to play against Bron. You ain't going to be able to do a sky hook against Kareem. And if you were to, we don't know how you would do. Based on the normalcy of his rules, based on the talent around him, based on the talent around you. You put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on a team like the Golden State Warriors, you see what I'm saying? Circumstances he never would have been a part of. Or you throw Michael in a log jam or a bad team like Washington Wizards. Or you put Kobe in a situation where he's loaded full of a team that's balanced like the Detroit Pistons and beat him in 2005. And just different things that you just never seen these players involved in. How can I be certain you to GOAT if I've never seen you in situations? Like, for example, this Donovan Mitchell thing. How do I know Donovan Mitchell can handle bad situations when he's only been in a good one? He's never been in a situation that wasn't fit for him. So how do I know he's a superstar max player who can handle all the stuff that I'm going to get thrown at me if he's my star? I don't know that. I've only seen him in a situation with Rudy Gobert, one of the best shot blockers in all of basketball, and in a situation where everybody around him didn't have the athleticism he did. Of course he's going to stand out. Of course he's going to do exactly what I need him to do. Without him, we don't have that at all. As I've said a trillion times. So it's like if we're going to pay him $200 million, like he's somebody who can be in every situation and succeed. Understand that he hasn't had an opportunity to prove that to us. You know what I mean? It's just certain things we go off of faith, solely faith. But to be able to identify when you're applying faith and not applying fact, sometimes I find it's hard for myself. I don't know if anybody else has that issue, but it's like sometimes you need to, like, that's not fact. That's faith. You have faith that Donovan Mitchell is going to be a superstar in New York. You don't know that you're going to be able to snatch him out of that Utah situation. He's going to provide that same play style or that same production. You're applying faith. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of times it has to do with stuff that has nothing to do with basketball, as we've said, or things that are non-basketball related, drive the decisions that affect the basketball floor. Of course, Kyrie Irving applying faith. A lot of people don't want to apply faith, even though he's more talented than the next guy. But you don't want to apply faith there because the risk is too much based on things that have nothing to do with the basketball floor. But you apply faith in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, overpay for him, bring him in, see what he can do, because he's going to be the opposite of that. You got the sentiment in place, you got the reliability in place. You know he's going to come and play every game, whatever. But it could be just as much of a detriment to your franchise if he comes in for some reason and underachieves and you've overpaid him, versus you taking a chance on a guy like Kyrie Irving and whatever happens. It's the same risk. You just don't see it that way because you're more comfortable with one risk than the other. But you got to realize when you're applying faith versus when you're applying fact. Giving away 5 picks for DeJounte Murray and slapping him next to Trae Young is applying faith. You don't know that's going to work. In fact, I think it ain't. Taking Rudy Gobert and slapping him next to Karl Towns and depleting yourself of all of your picks, obviously you're applying faith. There ain't no fact. You don't know that's going to work. The size tells you you're going to have an advantage every night. Anthony Edwards being able to roam around with that much rim protection should tell you he's going to get the most out of himself. But that ain't going to necessarily translate to you being certain you didn't make a massive mistake, trading away your whole future for Rudy Gobert. Applying faith. So I talk to my organization and I say, well, a guy like Kyrie Irving with the type of talent he has and the type of risk that's on the line with LeBron James potentially leaving if he ain't happy, I would say applying faith in this situation makes a lot of sense. You go pick up Kyrie Irving to see what happens. Because if you don't, you're gonna lose LeBron James. And of course with Brooklyn, since I'm skipping ahead, maybe you bring Kai back and you give him his money. Why? Because if you lose him, you're gonna lose KD. And that's a risk not worth the reward, especially when you consider what you're bringing back in response to that. I like stability as much as the next man. But a team with Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, and a bunch of other picks that I got in the plunder, that ain't better than Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant in any way, shape, or form if I'm the Brooklyn Nets. So if I'm going to apply that faith in that situation, I need to weigh it against what it is that I'm actually not believing in this situation. $500 million for Kyrie Irving and KD seems like a good investment if I'm a Brooklyn Nets team that don't have nothing else. And my contingency plan is a bunch of B-level guys that ain't going to get me past the second round. Not a better plan. Not a better application of faith in my opinion. So this is where my mind took me this morning, man. I wanted to rapid fire this off. Just let you guys know what I see there. I agree with LeBron James in a sense that if you're going to pick this sport, there's going to be some sacrifices that have to come with the respect that you receive as an individual player. And until they get to a point where the science and the math makes sense, probably a little while from now, we're not going to really know what these guys brought to the table fully. We're not going to really know what the fullness of actual production versus someone else's. And with that being said, I just feel like you need to put basketball first if you're building a basketball team. If I'm going to put all my money in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, expecting him to be a super duper star, why not put all my money in somebody like Kyrie Irving who's more talented? You know, these are questions I have to ask myself. If the goal is to win basketball games and we're doing a basketball thing here, then we need to make sure we're making basketball decisions. If I'm the Brooklyn Nets and I'm bringing in lesser talent because of my sentiment or my concerns or my focus, and if it ain't basketball, my focus is on having people aligned with my business or having people aligned with my ideals and things of that nature, then I need not build a basketball team. I need to be a part of something that puts people together for different things, right? Since those things matter more than basketball. Because if it's simply about basketball, then obviously $500 million into two basketball gods makes more sense, $500 million, than Slade taking a chance on another guy who's just going to come to work, and play hard, and get us to the second round and still going to lose. Yeah, everybody feels good because they can control a guy, or yeah, everybody feels good because they can rely upon the guy in a way that maybe you didn't feel you could rely on another guy, but he's reliable, but it's still going to lose. And that guy you don't know if you can trust, he's the one beating him. So I think I'll leave you guys with that, man. Sorry to Donovan Mitchell if what I've said is taking his value and disrespected, or taking his game and putting it somewhere else. He's just a hot topic name because of what's going on. If he wasn't in these conversations, it'd be a different name used. I don't have nothing against Donovan Mitchell. I just don't think he's overly talented for what it is that's going on here. I don't. I think his value is where it should be based on the circumstances he was blessed to have in the NBA. And nothing wrong with that until it's time for me to pay the bill for that. That's all I'm saying. My name is BDL44. Thank you all for watching.